Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 quick match gameplay. This time around we are on Galbaraz, playing as the forces of Norsca against the forces of Grudgin, the Dawi, the stout defenders of the north, and my opponent has decided to go for a bit of a defensive box, a little bit of defensive geometry here. And this is something that's can be relatively difficult for Norsca to deal with, because Norsca, unlike say Chaos, can't just spam elite and mid-tier heavy halberd units. They don't, and their monsters are honestly much easier to shut down for the Dwarves than the monsters for the say Chaos are, because the Chaos monsters are generally more mobile, more agile, more flexible. Whereas Norsca, your lower end infantry that you might want to try to swarm with tend to get blasting charged. They tend to get blown up that way. They don't tend to hold up all that well. And if you try to fall back and rely on Marauder champions with great weapons, which are your only elite, reasonably armored great weapon unit, they still kind of struggle to cleave through enemy units in a time-efficient manner. It'll take them a while to cleave through even lower-end Dwarven infantry, with the possible exception of miners. And by the time they manage to cleave through that infantry, usually all your heavy support is gone and all that sort of stuff. So what I decided to do here is a bit of a gimmicky strat myself. For my composition here, I've got a front line of Marauders, as well as 2 vanilla Marauders on either end. Of course, these guys are not going to be winning any beauty contests in a 1v1 with miners or oversaturating backlines. These guys will do a great job. They can absolutely take down cannon crews, thunderers, all sorts of units like that. So for that, they're great, and that is really the main reason to have them here. They're here to soak up enemy missile pressure. They're here to soak up enemy fire and harass, and then kind of collapse on the flanks. In the meantime, the elite core here, which unfortunately is already getting pounded a little bit. We've got 3 units of Marauder champions who, of course, don't have AP. They're not great in the straight-up engagement, but what they do have is they have a lot of staying power, and they've got very solid melee stats, and my hope is that with this heroic goon squad over here, we're going to be able to get some huge value out of them. Finally, as a bit of a reserve and as a bit of an elite nutcracker, we have 2 units of Marauder champions with great weapons who, of course, are going to be delivering that stellar AP as well as decent charge bonus onto the battlefield. I do believe these guys are overpriced, and I think they should be dropped in price to about 900 gold. They're currently really, I don't think, worth the stats or worth the cost, but maybe 950. But regardless, we will definitely see how they perform here, and definitely my hope is that they will be able to crack units like these Longbeards that otherwise could be a bit of a nuisance. On the flank, we do have 2 units of Marauder Horsemen, just a vanilla variant, to shoot away at gyrocopters and be a little bit of backline harass, and really our main goon squad is over here on the flank, where it is Wulfric as well as 2 Shaman Sorcerers of Metal mounted on chariots. And one of the cool things, these chariots are AP, and as I've done videos before, and as I've been reiterating so often, heroic chariots are absolutely amazing. They will do a lot of damage, they'll kill models on the charge, they'll constantly be killing models when they're doing damage, they grind surprisingly well. And with AP against the Dawi, they're going to be really, really solid, pretty tough to catch, and should do a pretty good job. Wulfric, of course, is in here with Fight or Die, Hunter of Champions, as well as Flowseeker. I've not bothered with the boat. I haven't bothered with Seafang, or of course the Sword of Torgald, which only affects non-AP, so basically useless when you've got an AP mount. The 2 Shaman Sorcerers, both of them actually have Plague of Rust, so my hope is to nuke multiple enemies' armor to make the job easier for the Marauder champions. And then we do have, of course, Metal Shifting on both of them, just to get more value that way. And finally, Transmutation of Lead to debuff enemy melee attack in an area. And of course, Scrolls of Protection. Now for my opponent, a bit of a new box, to put it kindly. As you can see, already shooing away at my Marauder Horsemen who are trying to get in and harass, but he does have 2 units of organ guns, as well as a cannon, and a lot of chevrons on these units. You can see they're up to 4 chevrons. And they're backed up by quite a few Longbeards. These have got 2 Longbeards with great weapons on either end. The front line composed of 3 Longbeards, a single unit of Dwarf Warriors with great weapons in the back, Quarrelers, and Thunderers. So quite a lot of shooting, quite a lot of staying power. They are backed, of course, by Ungrim, who's got his full kit, including the... I do believe maybe he doesn't have the Axe of Dargo. Oh, he doesn't have the Axe of Dargo, but he's got everything else. He's got Red Ruin, he's got Deadly Onslaught, Foeseeker, all that stuff. You can see here, we're immediately piling into the flank of these Longbeards, where we'll be doing some damage. Finally, my opponent did bring a Runesmith with all of his runes. Personally, not necessarily the biggest fan of that. I'd rather bring the Hammer of Kekdraz, but you never know. And honestly, the Oath and Steel rune here will actually be really useful for helping these Longbeards if I nuke them with a Plague of Rust. So regardless, you can see the Longbeards have already lost 10 models to the Shaman Sorcerers on the charge. Unfortunately, because I was a little inattentive or a little slow on the pulling out, I'm going to start taking fire here from Ungrim and damage from Ungrim, which is really, really bad. Fortunately for my opponent, though, Wolfric is going to dive here into the cannon. You can see he immediately takes it offline. He's just going to start cleaving through these crewmen. He just swings there and kills multiple, kills like 2 dwarves there. Just kind of silly that he kills multiple dwarves with the swing while he's not even touching them, but whatever. Can't think too much in this situation. So in the meantime, Wolfric is definitely being harassed a little bit by Ungrim, so we're going to try to pull out and pull away. You can see we're actually going to manage to rout this cannon crew. Constantly taking fire, but we are pushing in now. I'm a little sloppy here with my engagements, so I should be trying to get my Marauders more on more wider, on the wide side of things, but unfortunately we're not really doing that correctly. So my opponent is going to be able to zone me out a little bit, and you can see Wolfric here taking an absolute pounding, already down by a lot of HP, thanks to the fire from the organ guns, thanks to the Ungrim, who's just being an absolute pain in the rear. But, you know, we're doing some damage. Transmutation of Blood does go down. Over here, the Longbeards are kind of sliding out with the Marauder Champions. We are taking quite a bit of fire from the Quarrelers, but because we do have respectable armor, we're not going to be too susceptible. You can see I do drop scroll of shielding. Rune of Wrath and Rune definitely doing some damage, but only just slowing Wolfric, so nothing too tragic. And you can see the Shaman Sorcerer of Metal is going to dive into the Longbeards here and start racking up the kills. Meantime, Wolfric has this engaged, Ungrim being a nuisance, but we're going to be able to start hitting these guys with Plague of Rust. You can see these guys drop to 70 armor. Models already, and we're going to drop them to 40 armor. So in comes Wolfric, in comes the Shaman Sorcerer of Metal, and we're just going to start grinding through them. And Ungrim being low on mass and being an infantry lord is stuck over here, with Hunter of Champions actually making him surprisingly susceptible to the Marauder Champions. So definitely not where he wants to be in life. You can see, though, the balance of power definitely not in my favor. And this is one of those things, I think, when you're going into dwarf matchups and your opponent whittles you down a lot early on, don't take the balance of power too seriously. It's one of those things, it's going to be very badly skewed against you, especially because your opponent probably has some ammo, has probably still some shooting capability. You have to just suck it up and try to bust through that front line. Get into the cookie jar. You can see over here we've already kind of succeeded. These Marauders are into the Quarrelers. They're going to start slaughtering. Definitely going to win this fight. They just have better melee stats when push comes to shove, or I want to say they'll win. Maybe they won't with the rear charge coming in from the cannon crew. They're definitely starting to struggle a little bit. But regardless, they should, I think, stabilize and be able to fight the crew off. You can see the cannon kind of getting bogged down here a little bit. The Marauders are going to start stabilizing and then fighting their way out of that situation. Meantime, over here, Wolfric just diving through, going into the Thunders. Horsemen did get distracted, did get a bit destroyed. And you can see over here the constant fire from the Organ is just doing a lot of work. My opponent using his Runes of Wrath and Rune as a slow. Not a bad idea, but he doesn't have the tools to really shoot me, or to shut me down with, say, Slayers. So the Runes are not really doing the greatest work here. We pop Foe Seeker, which helps kind of counteract that rune, and we're just kind of running him. And finally, with these, because these Longbeards pulled back to try to deal with Wolfric, they're now stuck in over here. And because of the rear charge coming in from the Marauders, they're going to start buckling. And you can see we're going to push through, get on top of these Thunders, and start taking all this fire offline. Over here, the Quarrels, it's only a matter of time before the Marauders reinforcing here will take them all down for good. Here on the flanks, you can see the Longbeards finally pulled this unit of Marauder Champions into the fray. We're going to start beating the smack out of these Longbeards with great weapons. These Longbeards finally losing to the Marauder Champion with great weapons. Slowly but surely, we're turning the tide, essentially. Our Shaman Sorcerer able to push through. He's up to 25 kills. This other one up to 31. Just mulching through those crews, forcing them to dismount. You can see actually taking the guns offline. So definitely the Organ Guns here not having a good day. And over here, despite my opponent's best efforts, the infantry is holding, and Wolfric, you know, he's still around kicking. He's still got 600 HP. He's still got 69 kills. He's just running amok, doing a lot of damage as my opponent's backline is just collapsing. And so we're suddenly, the Quarrelers are down, and as of course dwarf units start routing, we're able to pursue them very, very efficiently because dwarves are slow. So my opponent's trying to pull his front line back here to try to salvage the salvage shooting, but that's kind of a bad move because at this point that just exposes them to rear damage from the Marauder Champions. You can see they're just raking in the kills, just smacking these Longbeards in the butt and doing a lot of work. You can see these guys are crazy cudgels. I don't they're like one of the weirdest great weapon units in the game. They've got like sledgehammers and just huge. I don't even know what that ball on a stick is. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be, but either way, they were able to force those Longbeards off, and as you can see, as the route takes hold, you can see all these Quarrelers, all these Marauders, or all these Longbeards, we're going to start chasing them down. And we're setting Wolfric loose on him. He's going to run them down. He's going to force Shatters. You can see the Quarrelers over here. We're making sure none of these units are going to make a comeback. Chariots are really good at killing fleeing units. It's something I learned in campaign. But Chariots are really, really good at killing fleeing units. And you can see, basically just, Wolfric kind of ran through this unit. We're going to stick the Sorcerer on him. Here, Wolfric's going to dive into the back. Longbeards with great weapons. He takes a swipe there, but you know, it just doesn't matter. He's doing way too much damage. He's going to kind of cleave through him, and they're going to rout for dear life as well. And at this point, my opponent's army essentially just reduced these Longbeards to Ungrim, as well as the single unit Wolf Warriors and the Runesmith. So now it's really sort of the end game. The Shaman Sorcerer Metal diving in. Certainly some of our units are still fleeing, but at this point the balance of power pretty decisively out of my opponent's favor. The organ gun is over here. So as I was about to pull Wolfric into the dwarves, we're going to pull them around and go after the organ gun crew. We're going to just pile in, just run the poor guys over. The poor buggers really don't stand a chance. They'll immediately lose 3 models, and they're not going to stick around too much longer. Wolfric coming in from behind, just slaughtering them, and it's just some brutal mayhem. My opponent kind of setting up a last stand sort of here, bastion of these Longbeards, backed by the Runesmith and backed by Ungrim. But at this point, we might as well just sit back and soak up the view as these guys are kind of getting cleaved down by these Marauder champions, their last legs themselves, jumping into the fray. The Longbeards being shielded by Runification, but at this point, it's just the tide of the Norscans is too great. And these guys are not going to be able to hold. You can see Ungrim, of course, doesn't have very good melee defense. Ungrim's survivability comes from his armor, and the fact that he's unbreakable is annoying. But in and of himself, Ungrim is not particularly good at defending himself. He's got terrible melee defense, as you can see, and definitely not the most amazing. So we're going to hit him with a Plague of Frost here. We're just going to drop him. Despite the Rune of Oath and Steel, it's going to drop him down to 90 armor. And shortly we're actually going to get our Hunter of Champions off cooldown with Wolfric. You can see Wolfric kind of sitting around there, taking in the view. So we'll hit him with a Hunter of Champions down to 60 armor, which definitely shows the value of Oath and Steel there. But yeah, he's going to be down to 30. His melee defense is nowhere. At this point, it's just game over. Game over, man. Game over. These poor dwarves. You can see the Runesmith losing to army losses. Ungrim here just getting run over by the Shaman Sorcerer of Metal. He's sitting here being sad in fits. He's going to stand up, get ready for a bit of a last stand, but it's just too little too late as he gets chopped down in a matter of seconds there by all these angry Norscans. And that's going to be a game for my opponent. So, good game. Was a lot of fun to try this build. And this is a build I've had quite some success with against the dwarves. It's something dwarves don't really expect, I think. You go very low on AP, but you have a lot of swarming potential. I think it's the way you got to go with Norskins, because otherwise you can go with trolls, but trolls have very low leadership. And of course they're very bad against slayers. So I'm not the biggest fan of them. You can go with mammoths, but mammoths currently are kind of in a bad spot. If mammoths get buffed a bit or get cheaper, maybe, I think that would be more viable. But right now they're kind of weak, on the weak side of things. You can go with your chariots, but your chariots don't have AP really. Plus they're relatively easier to shut down. They're easier to body block. They're easier to shut down with trollhammer torpedoes, that sort of stuff, in my opinion. They just tend to get nuked much more easily than single model chariots do. And they also don't tend to pick off models, which is very nifty, especially when you're fighting. Say, if you need to kill some Iron Drakes, the fact that you kill, or if you need to deal with Thunderers, which is really important. The main thing when you're ever dealing with dwarves is you kill the back line, you kill the Slayers, and you're basically done. At that point, the front line, no matter how tough it is, it can be Iron Breakers, it can be Longbeards, it's hammers, whatever. It's probably not going to win against chariots, against heavy unit play. So for that, I find the chariots are stellar. They can outrun slayers, they can pile through slayers, they can kind of just plow through them. They don't take too much damage, they won't do great, obviously, if they get stuck in, but they won't take terrible damage. And they can pick off models, which is huge. If you say you get into some Thunderers, if you take a normal chariot unit, you might take half their HP off. Let's say that you do. It's kind of unlikely because you don't even have AP on Norscan chariots, that non-heroic chariots. But let's say you do, and you take. But the thing is, you're probably going to take off like 2 models or something and half their HP. Whereas if you go in with a Shaman Sorcerer, there's a good chance that you're going to take off like 10 models. That's actually a huge difference in the overall scope of things. Even if you're not able to shut down the Thunder unit for good, the fact that you've cut down their damage output by such a huge amount is very, very nifty. And I find that absolutely critical against dwarves who are very reliant on their shooting. The fact that the chariots also tend to be rather good at killing gun models, which I was surprised by. It's actually something I more learned in this game than anywhere else. If you're dealing with Iron Drakes, with Trollhammer torpedoes, the fact that you can cleave down 1 or 2 or 3 of them at a time is huge. They come in units of 21, so everyone you can kill is a huge win there. That's a huge benefit. I know some people try to use trolls. I know some people try to use mammoths. Personally, I don't agree with either of those. I know some people try to use hatchets. I really don't like those because dwarves, of course, have a lot of shooting of their own. They bring like 2 units of Bugman's Rangers. Your hunters are probably going to get their butts kicked, and they're going to get almost no value. So not personally the biggest fan of it. But yeah, otherwise I do think this is it's a build that's been giving me some success. I'm not sure it's the way to go. I have been considering dropping one of the swapping one of the shamans for shadows just to get enfeebling foe. If I was going for a competitive build, if I was going for a tourney and I wanted to fight dwarves, I would probably bring a build like this one. But because you can't bring redundant spells, I would probably go with shadows and enfeebling foe, and probably the withering rather than going with this sort of composite with double metal. And I'm still not entirely sold on double metal. I just wanted to try out the Plague of Frost. I just thought it would be pretty cool. For my opponent's build, obviously a lot gimmicky, kind of, because it was a new box essentially. And I don't say that to be mean, but it is essentially a new box. And I don't box up. I think I want to say it was either Dav or Gabo who recently did a video, but who recently did a video on this, on not boxing up your troops. Don't clump. You're gonna pay for it horribly. Make sure, even if you're doing a defensive composition, spread out your front line, spread out your shooting. Make sure it's not just clumped up in one spot, because then you're going to be having all your units getting shut down at the same time. One unit gets through, and suddenly like half your shooting is offline, because some of those units are going to wrap around. It's whatever. It's a charge of hounds, so like 10 hounds are going to escape past the unit. They're going to get into your second unit. Suddenly you've got 2 thunders offline because of a single unit of hounds, and it's just terrible. So don't box up so much. If I was going to recommend some stuff here, dump the chevrons. You don't need them. Quarrelers, thunders, they're okay, I guess. I'd probably not bring this much gunfire. Personally, I don't think you want artillery against Norsca. Certainly, you can soften them up a bit, but I personally find that point defense stuff like Iron Drakes with Trollhammers, Thunders, that sort of stuff is much better. I'd bring Slayers. I'd probably dump the 2 Organ Guns for some Slayers. Get rid of these chevrons. Get like 2 Slayers, maybe like Dragonback Slayers and Giant Slayers. That'll give you a solid sort of core there. Dump the Kin. Get either Iron Drakes with Trollhammers or Thunders. And I'd say you have a decent composition. You're in a decent spot. I'd possibly even dump the Runesmith. I'd just get a wider front line in general. Definitely probably, well, it was with Caricadrin, so you're stuck with them, Grim. But that's just my 2 cents. Regardless, good game to my opponent, KCDT12 here. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you found it entertaining and perhaps a little informative. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe below to keep up with additional content, as I do post daily. If you have any questions, any comments, any criticism, as usual, don't hesitate to ask. I'll do my best to respond as soon as I can. I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.